Hello friends, welcome to my channel. Today our topic is on vulnerability of children and their issues. It is important not only for your exams, it is also important to know how different forms of vulnerability impact people and society as a whole. Let us begin with a simple question. What is vulnerability? In simple words, vulnerability means being open to harm, damage, or exploitation. It could be physical, emotional, social, or economic. It basically shows less ability to recover from difficult or stressful situations in life. For example, let us think about children, elderly people, or persons with disabilities. They are called vulnerable because anyone at any time can harm or exploit them. By the way, now let us discuss about a formal definition of vulnerability by WHO and UNESCO. WHO stands for World Health Organization and UNICEF stands for United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. Now let us read the definition given by WHO and UNICEF. According to them, vulnerability is the state or condition of being weak or poorly defended. In other words, when a person or a community has less amount of resources or less protection, they face a greater risk of exploitation and then they become vulnerable. If you look at the right side of the slide, you will notice there are some key words connected with vulnerability. They are deficiency, fragility, weakness, and lack of capacity. All these terms point to one simple truth. That is, when protection is weak, the risk of harm and exploitation becomes stronger. And with that, we have a basic understanding of what vulnerability means.
Hello again. Let's dive into the different forms of child vulnerability that we find in our society. Let's start with the most basic one, the deprivation of basic needs. Think about it in this way. What does we absolutely need to survive and thrive in life? First, healthy food and clean water. Second, a safe and stable home. Third, proper clothes. Fourth, love and care from family. And of course, access to a doctor or hospital when we are not well. So when we say deprivation of basic needs, we are simply talking about not getting these essential things that every child needs for a healthy and happy life. Now let's talk about education and social exclusion. We all know what education is, but what happens when a child is excluded from it? Social exclusion is what happens when a child is left out and cannot join the mainstream of society. He cannot go to school, so he cannot learn the same things or make the same friends as other children. This isolation makes him vulnerable because he is being left behind. Next, we have the dangerous cycle of illness and malnutrition. These two are best friends in their worst way. Imagine this cycle. A child does not get enough good food, which leads to a weak body. Because the body is weak, it gets sick quickly. And when the child is sick, they often do not feel like eating, which makes them even weaker and more vulnerable. Now let's talk about the painful reality of abuse and harm. It is important to understand the difference. Abuse is the action, the mean, cruel and violent action that someone does to a child. And harm is the result, the injury that occurs due to the abuse. It may be physical, mental or emotional in a child's case. In simple terms, abuse is the bad treatment and harm is the hurt that it causes. And of course, disease. When our body is not working properly and we are not well, at that time, we naturally become vulnerable. Now, as a result of all these factors, children face very specific risks. So let us now discuss one by one. The absence of schooling. It means no training for life, no learning at all. It leaves a child unprepared for the world. A lack of formal identity documents. This is like being invisible in a country where you live in. Suppose you do not have your birth certificate. You do not, then what will happen to you? You cannot prove your age to get into a school. You cannot access proper health care at a hospital. And even you cannot get a legal job in your life. This leads to higher risks of illness and malnutrition. Without a balanced diet and proper care, these children face health issues throughout the year. Now, let us discuss about the exposure to domestic violence, exploitation and neglect. Think of a child's home as their castle. When it's broken, it happens in different ways. Domestic violence is about seeing and hearing scary fights at home. Exploitation is about being used for work or money and treated like a tool instead of a child. Neglect is about being ignored and not giving food, care, or love. Finally, there is the risk of infection with diseases like HIV and AIDS. HIV is a virus that attacks the body's immune system, what we call the defense force. When the system becomes too weak, it can lead to AIDS, which makes it very hard for the body to fight off other illness. To sum up, all these specific risks are deeply interconnected. One often leads to another, creating a web of challenges, and ultimately they make children more vulnerable, less safe, and less secure in their everyday lives.
Finally, thanks for watching. Kindly consider subscribing my channel. I will come with new and informative videos like this in each episode. Do your work, believe in God and stay positive. Okay?